Welcome to Jesus On, a look at today's issues from an eternal perspective. Pastor Zack and Pastor John will be giving us biblical insight into some of the problems the world faces today. Sit back and listen as we hear Jesus On, the problems you're dealing with right now.
Hey, welcome to the Jesus On podcast, where we talk about what Jesus has to say about relevant topics to your life. If you're watching this episode on YouTube, you'll notice we're in a different location. We just did a facility remodel at our church, the Mission Church, and we are in our new lobby, hanging out in some chairs. Amy would never say this, but she was the one who put together this background. This is our mission statement as a church, reaching and equipping people with the gospel. But today, we are doing an episode on Jesus on the present. So far, we've done an episode on Jesus on the past, Jesus on the future, Jesus on the present. Before we talk about Jesus on the present, Amy, let's just talk about how we think about and treat the present. What are your thoughts?
I know for me personally, it's way easier to think about the future.
Yeah.
Even things as simple as, what are we having for dinner tonight? And do we have what we need to make that happen? Or do I remember everything my kids are doing? And maybe second place in my mind might be what happened in the past. Like, did I say that right to that person yesterday? Mm-hmm. Or maybe that I shouldn't have said that. Is there something I should do about that? Or just rehashing other things. But I very much put third what's going on right in front of me in the moment that I am in, right there. Unless I'm engrossed in some kind of task or conversation that's really holding my attention, my mind tends to drift future or past. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this before we pressed record. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how future focused I am in, and was just struck by how when I fail to really live in the present, I miss out on what God is bringing into my life. You know, like God works in the present of our life. He's trying to meet us and engage with us right here, right now. And I think there's something to be said about things happen in the present.
Yeah.
Like that's when stuff happens. And am I intentional about what kind of things should and could happen in the present? And I think about living in the present with my kids, or living in the present with my wife, living in the even in this moment right now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever done this. Oh, I'm the worst at this. I will be having a conversation with somebody, and the reason why this comes to mind is because this happens all the time. And when I say all the time, basically every conversation I'll be having with somebody, and maybe this is, just how my mind works, but I'll be like, oh, yeah, I need to do that later. Or, that I need to fix that over there. Oh my gosh. Do you do that?
Are
you doing that right now?
I do that. Nope, I don't do that as much as I do. Okay, we're having this conversation right now. Okay, this is what we're talking about. Okay, this is what I know about this topic. And, I could say this next. Or I wonder if they've thought of this. When can I jump in and ask them this question? I confess I do that all the time, but I'm thinking of the future of our conversation instead of just being present in the moment and hearing what the other person has to say. So I apologize to we've had a conversation with out there.
You're putting into words what I struggle with too. I wonder if that's just a good exercise for our listeners of take a moment and think about how do you treat the present? What do you think about in the present. What do you think about when you're having a conversation with someone, and how present are we to the present, and how unpresent are we to the present? So we could go down this rabbit trail. All's to say, we have a hard time being present in the present.
Yeah.
Let's go to Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus is a master of the present. He taught about it. He certainly lived it. What comes to mind for you, Amy? Jesus on the present.
Yeah. It would be easy to think of somebody who's the Alpha and the Omega as living everywhere all at once, all the time. But when he came to live on earth in a human body, he was living in the present. And like you said, he was a master at living in the present. The present is where we experience things. It is where God meets us. It is where we learn. It is where we experience goodness and grace and relationship. And he knew that so well. And one of the ways that we can see that is in his ministry, how often he was interrupted. There is nothing more present or more now than an interruption. I'm sure all of you out there can think of a time that you were interrupted. And we often get frustrated. It's hard to not get frustrated with an interruption. And it's almost like, oh, I'm working on this thing. You think you're in the present, maybe working on this thing, but really there might be a more pressing need, a more pressing chance to meet God, to learn, to engage in relationship. So we see that when Jesus was traveling from one place to another, people would come to him for healing or questions or for various things. And he would stop and he would engage with that person, and then he would continue on. Just think of the woman who was bleeding.
It's one of my favorite stories.
She snuck up on him, touched him. She didn't want to be seen. It was a scary thing. And Jesus, yes, felt the power go out of him, but he was on his way to heal someone else.
Yeah.
He could have very easily thought, okay, she's good.
Yeah.
I felt my power leave. She's fine. I need to stay focused on my task at hand and just keep going. But he took that interruption as a moment to engage with her, to call her daughter, and to talk with her and acknowledge her as a person and her story in that very, very present moment. And so you see that over and over again, not as a burden for Jesus, but it's really where most of his ministry happens, where the children are brought to him, and where he really gets to show who he is and to show that he cares about who we are as people. It all happens in the present. And it also is important to know that Jesus wants to teach us to live in the present. If he's going to come and do it, there's value to it.
Yeah.
If he's going to live in the present, if he's going to leave the eternity of heaven to come and be in the present, we know that it has value. And so we can see this in Matthew 6, in the Lord's Prayer, when he teaches us, give us this day our daily bread. He doesn't tell us to ask for bread for next week or next year, or that, we'll just never go away. He asks for us to pray for bread for this moment, for our needs to be met in this day with faith, knowing God will meet us in this day and will meet us in those moments. He also teaches us not to worry. Later in the book of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, he talks about, don't worry. Yeah. Look at the birds of the air. They're taken care of. They do what they do, and they're taken care of. Look at the flowers. They do what they do, and they're taken care of. Be like that. Do the thing I've given you to do today, whether that's, it might be a parent, a student. Maybe you have a job of some kind. Maybe you're retired. But do what I've given you to do in this moment and know that that's enough to think about. Don't worry about tomorrow. It has enough going on. He's already there. He knows. Yeah. But be in this moment and thinking about what this moment needs. And the other big thing we can learn about living in the present is that sometimes God is going to ask you to use what you have in this moment today to do something for his glory. And it's not going to feel like you have what it takes. You could tell God, okay, God, I can see that you want me to do this. I don't know how to do that yet. I think I need more time to think about it, or pray about it, or grow, or go to school for it, or read a book on it. And he might say, you have what you need. Go to it now. Yeah. And I will be with you and will be sufficient for you. We can see that when the boy offers his small loaves of bread and his small fish to feed a crowd of thousands. And it would make more sense to say, okay, I know where a store is, like I'll be back in a few hours or tomorrow and I will bring food back for you. But Jesus asks for what he has right now and then does the rest. When he was faithful to give what he had, Jesus could step in and you could see his power being made perfect. And that happened in that moment. And the boy didn't delay it, and he got to see God's goodness in that moment that he was in. Yeah. Which is amazing. And then finally, I think Jesus knows that living in the moment is hard because he gives us tools to live there well, to not feel like we're floundering. It will be hard, it will be work to trust that we can live in the moment, but he gives us what we need. It says his divine power has given us everything we need for life and godliness through his own glory and goodness. And we see that in 2 Peter. So some of those things are that he's with us. Yeah. We're not alone. He's meeting us in the present. He says he's with us always. In Galatians 5, we see that he's given us the Holy Spirit. And when we are walking with him in that present moment, then we are able to access things like love, joy, peace, patience. I don't know if any of you, when we were talking about interruptions, thought, oh, I have children and I am interrupted all the time. That is a real fast way to test patience and to grow with that. But he doesn't ask us to do that alone or under our own power. He gives us all of those fruit of the Spirit when we walk with him as tools to live well in the present with him. And so we're not alone. We have those things because he knows that living in the present is totally worth it. Yeah. I'm not sure I have much more to add. Those are just some really rich ideas. You know, what I gleaned from the things you were sharing is Jesus treated interruptions as an invitation. And what if we did the same thing? How many of us, we get a phone call from a person and we're like, oh, I can't talk right now because X, Y, and Z. You could, but you didn't make time for it. And I think I wonder if that's really why we miss out on the invitations, the interruptions that are invitations, is we don't have enough room in our schedule for it. I wonder, just proactively, we should schedule our days for interruptions. The other thing we need to do is examine how we are trusting God with our time. Our interruptions, whether we schedule extra time or not, might not always come when we want them to. And if we can hear God saying, like, this is an invitation you need to take, then we're going to have to really practice trusting that he's got time taken care of. So good. I'm reflecting on some significant ministry moments of my life, even things that have happened recently, and I'm thinking they were all interruptions. I'm thinking about, I'm pointing, Amy can see it, that there's the door to our worship center. At the end of a church a couple of weeks ago, there was someone there and they'd showed up, and I said, hey, I haven't seen you before, and what brought you here? And
He's like, oh, I just got here 5 minutes ago. The service had ended. And he just basically said, I just felt like I needed to come here.
Huh.
And it was like this interruption. I'm supposed to go downstairs, talk with other people. I'm like, you know what? And we had this 20-minute conversation. Come to find out, he was in a tremendous crossroads of his life.
Wow.
And I just think, like, I could have just what's crazy is I've probably had similar moments like that where I didn't have time for that interruption and I missed out on maybe what God wanted to use me for.
Yep.
That is a crazy thought. How many of us have these interruptions that are invitations from God to work or bless or minister to someone, and we say, sorry, I don't have time. I've got this budget meeting,
Right.
or whatever it is, or I've got to do the dishes. Oh gosh, I'm getting convicted right now as I talk to this, because our kids come up, Dad, would you do this? Invitation. And I mean, granted, we've got to be wise about those things, right? And we can't treat every interruption from our child as an invitation to go play video games with them for 45 minutes or to go outside and play catch for 4 hours like my son would do if he could. But man, at the same time, the interruptions of our children, the interruptions of our friendships, the interruptions that come in marriage, what if we put enough margin in our schedule where we could say yes to these interruptions that are invitations from God to bless and minister to others?
Mm-hmm.
Man.
And then trust him when they come.
And trust him when they come. And I think the last thing is this: Jesus works in the present.
Yes.
Jesus works in the present. He's not just interrupting you as an invitation to bless somebody, but he's interrupting you and inviting you to join him.
Yes.
In that. It's as if Jesus is going, hey, we're going to do this together.
It's going to be great.
It's going to be great. Come with me. Join with me. Let me give you your daily bread with you. And so this idea of Jesus inviting us to be present with him,
mm-hmm.
it's so cliche, but just being present to Jesus in the present.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a very, very corny old saying, maybe some of you even groaning right now, that goes, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
Today is a gift.
And as corny as it is, it's true.
Mm-hmm. I would encourage people, this is, I've done yoga a few times, and they're like, be present in the moment. Mm-hmm. And it's a little Eastern mysticism of sorts. And really, Jesus is like, hey, be present, but I'm present with you.
Yes.
Like, empty your mind so that you can fill it with Jesus. Yoga would just be like, just empty your mind. But like, I would challenge us, take a present inventory.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do in the present? Are you trying to multitask? Are you thinking about the future, the past? Or are you intentional about the present? And then I would encourage you to think about, when you get interrupted today, it's going to happen. What if you saw that as an invitation to be present to what Jesus is inviting you to join him in, and see what he does?
Yes.
See what he does.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this short series on Jesus, on the past, future, and the present has blessed you. Hope it's helped you not to have your past define you, but having Jesus really redefine your past and give you hope for the future, and trusting him in the future. And then for us to just be present with Jesus.
When the rest is taken care of.
And the rest is taken care of.
All that's left is to be present.
Yeah. And Amy, thanks for joining during this episode. Pastor John is in Africa and Sierra Leone, and amazing things are going on there. But hey, Audience, thanks for listening. We hope this blessed you, encouraged you, and we hope to have you back again soon.